Watchers, where we talk about the stories and characters we love and the shows they live in. My name is Ron, and let's talk about Season 1 of The Expanse. I've been looking for some good science fiction TV for a while now, and The Expanse has been on my interplanetary radar for a while now. A couple of weeks ago, it finally hit Netflix, outside of the US that is, so let's talk about it. The Expanse tells a story of a future where humans have colonized Mars and the Asteroid Belt. Earth is generally unchanged, but the UN is now more of a global government. And while we don't get all the backstory in this season, the humans that live on Mars are their own nation. The belt is home to working class people who mine the asteroids for goods for both Earth and Mars. The people who live on the belt, the Belters, are typically poor and have to live in pretty harsh conditions. Earth and Mars do work together. They have trade agreements, they have this joint Navy task force together, but there is definitely tension, like there would be between two superpowers. Meanwhile, the Belters feel disenfranchised from both ends, so the OPA, Outer Planets Alliance, is gaining strength. The OPA is what Earth may see as a terrorist organization, but the Belters generally see it as the only organization that will fight for their rights. So you can already see that there's a pretty rich setting here. The Expanse takes problems that we have today, like corruption, corporate greed, taking advantage of weaker economies, and tries to envision these issues on an interplanetary scale in humanity's future. Basically, the technology is super advanced, we have spaceships, we control multiple planets, but people are still pretty terrible. I'm not gonna get into the plot itself too much here. I'm just gonna say that it follows three very different people as Earth, Mars, and the Belt are getting ever closer to war. You got a guy who works on a freighter on some asteroid, you got a detective from one of the stations in the Belt, he's trying to solve a case, and you got a politician from Earth. The Expanse does a really good job in introducing you to this world, showing you who the players are, and helping you understand everybody's motivation. I really like the setting in this show. Nations at the verge of war, some people are trying to stop it, while others might benefit from it. It sometimes feels like more of a political thriller than a sci-fi show. Don't get me wrong, this is very much a science fiction show. You have crazy technology and robots and guns that make weird sounds and space battles, everything. You have all the hallmarks of a sci-fi story, which is great, but I also love how the show somehow doesn't focus on the sci-fi stuff all the time, because it means you get a lot more story. And about the story, I found it pretty compelling. I wasn't glued to the screen the whole time, but the story is at the same time complicated enough to be interesting, but not hard to follow. Because some of these stories are things that you've seen before, like for example, the detective running down leads. He starts breaking rules to get to the truth. You've seen it, but not quite like this. The performances in the show, you know, they're fine. I don't think you'll find acting and writing that'll take your breath away in this show, but the story has such a large scale that I don't feel it matters all that much. The Expanse creates this world in turmoil and puts you in the middle of it. Well, not world, galaxy, I don't know, you get what I mean. The story is big, it has a lot of moving parts, but it's still very coherent, and it has a lot of style. And Thomas Jane is just always a lot of fun. He's pretty great. I will admit that there were some mid-season episodes where I was on my phone while I was watching, just kind of waiting for the story to move along. But overall, the pacing was pretty good. I'm a big fan of the Mass Effect games, and while the universe and story of The Expanse is very, very different from Mass Effect, I can't help but feel that if we did ever get a Mass Effect TV show that doesn't tell the shepherd space Jesus story, but tells lower level stories and political stories, it would be kind of similar to The Expanse. I also like that there's a lot of conflict in The Expanse, but there isn't one bad guy. Sometimes that's a bad thing for a show. Like Luke Cage, for example, is a very personal story, so not having one strong villain really hurt that show, in my opinion. But as we said, The Expanse is a big story, and it's less about fighting this one threat and more about here are all the things that are contributing to this conflict. The show also looks pretty cool. They didn't take the crazy space outfits too far, which I liked, and the space stations themselves have a very old school, gritty science fiction look to them, which I thought was pretty awesome. The visual effects, the CGI, all of it is very obvious. It didn't really bother me. The story still gets told. And you know that SyFy, the SyFy channel, doesn't have HBO budgets. It's fine. When I watch a good episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, for example, I don't really care about the visual effects as long as they get the job done, which they do in Star Trek, and mostly in The Expanse as well. Bottom line, should you watch it? If you're a sci-fi fan, I'd say that this is a pretty safe bet. It's a solid show, but the world around the story is what really shines. Even if you're not a hardcore science fiction fan, but this seems kind of interesting, give it a shot. There's a lot of story between space battles and lasers. I had a lot of fun with this show. I could probably talk about some issues with the writing and maybe with the pacing, but I feel it'll very much be nitpicking. What about you? Did you watch season 1 of The Expanse? What do you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below and let's get the discussion going. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps out a lot. And if you're finding binge watchers for the first time, welcome. I'd like to invite you to join the binge watchers community. Come talk about TV with us. It's a lot of fun. You can also click around and see some of the other videos we have on the channel and maybe subscribe. But in any case, keep binging and I will see you in space.